Egypt's mystery 2,000-year-old sarcophagus tomb opened, and it could belong to Alexander the Great. Well, the archaeologists are baffled. They wish they could find Alexander the Great tomb. Baffled archaeologists who found a 2,000-year-old mysterious black granite tomb in an Egyptian city where Alexander the Great is believed to be buried have pried it open 2 weeks after it was dug up. This is an article on Express UK by Carly Reid. Now we know that Alexander the Great died somewhere in Persia, close to India, and he was prophesied in the book of Daniel. He lived about 350 BC. He died at a very early age, just as was prophesied. And from what one of the Christian Orthodox saints, St. Andrew of Crete, said, his very big accomplishment is the fact that he closed the openings of the abominable races of Nephilim in the areas that he conquered to the east. He didn't go to the west because the west was already basically colonized by the Greeks all the way into Ireland, Scotland, and even Scandinavia, by the Spartans, by the tribe of Dan of the Peloponnese, of the area of Mycenae and Argos. This he already knew of. And he was a special person prophesied hundreds of years before by the archangel Gabriel to the prophet Daniel when Israel and the tribes of Israel were in the Babylonian exile. He was also said to be the biological son of one of the last pharaohs of Egypt, Pharaoh Nectanebo. Now, they have found this 2,000-year-old tomb. An ancient mummy has been found. It was carefully carried out of the eerie 10-foot sarcophagus that dates back to the era of Ptolemy, who was one of the generals of Alexander the Great. The Ptolemaic period was between 305 BC to 30 BC, Ptolemy and his successors. Shockingly, the frightened find is still intact after being dusted off, with little decay to the bones and the skull. Now, I for one think that the skull is very long and narrow, whereas when we see the statues and the paintings and the busts of Alexander the Great, we notice that he had a problem with his neck. He was not very tall. His generals were basically taller than him, but he was fair, red-haired, blue-eyed, green-eyed, and also from what I have read, everyone said that he had a very pleasant smell about him. His pharaohs were very attractive, a very pleasant smell about him. His body odor was very pleasant. Now, the thing is that he had a crick in his neck towards the left. And we see this many times in the busts of his body or his head. He basically had one sculptor who was able to do him justice because he was born with a problem with his neck, and that he couldn't turn his neck properly to hold his head straight. So that was a problem, an anatomical problem with his neck. And also his head was not narrow, it was basically more fuller out. Whereas this cranium here, to me, looks like it's pretty long. Now, going back to this article, nevertheless, the shocking find is still intact after being dusted off, little decay to the bones and the skull. The unknown corpse was also found in the same position it was buried in. It's the biggest sarcophagus to ever be found in the city and was discovered by researchers working under the Supreme Council of Antiquities, who will now work endlessly to attempt to identify the body. It was encountered more than 16 feet underground. It was buried alongside a white alabaster stone head, which was believed to be the tomb's occupant. The discovery was made while clearing out the burial site for the erection of a new building. The head of the ancient Egyptian antiquity sector, Dr. Ayman Ashmawi, said that a layer of mortar between the lid and the body of the stone coffin indicates that it has not been opened since it was sealed off over 2,000 years ago. The finding is extremely rare, since Egyptian tombs are often so badly damaged. The centuries that archaeologists hardly ever find one that's still intact until now. The mummy is not the first mesmerizing find unearthed by the experts in Egypt. In February, archaeologists discovered a 4,400-year-old tomb just outside Cairo, near the county's Giza plateau. The tomb is believed to have belonged to a woman known as Het-Pet, who archaeologists say was close to the ancient Egyptian royals of the 5th dynasty. Other findings include an ancient cemetery with more than 40 mummies and a necklace containing a, quote, message from the afterlife, end quote. In the neighborhood country of Sudan, neighboring Sudan, an ancient statue of a Nubian king was also found in February. The artifact was discovered along the Nile River and is 2,600 years old, including an inscription written in the Egyptian hieroglyphs. A guard is currently in place while the mummy is removed for examination. As we know, Alexander the Great was the king of the northern kingdom of Greece in Macedonia, the area of Thessaloniki, Salonika. He was born in 356 BC and died just about 33 years later, 323 BC. His resting place of his body has long been a mystery after his corpse was stolen before its burial. He was brought from Asia in a gold carriage filled with honey. His body was in that gold carriage filled with honey, and he was buried in honey, surrounded by honey, so that his body would not be corrupted. And he was brought to Alexandria. People thought that he was later whisked off to be buried in Salonika. Basically, we don't know what happened to the body of Alexander the Great. Did he ever go to Salonika? Did he stay in Alexandria? We don't know. Early scrolls have revealed his body was reburied in Alexandria. Some of the prophecies concerning Alexander the Great that are found in the book of Daniel of the Old Testament. The ram and the he-goat. The he-goat, chapters 8, 5-8, comes swiftly from the west. Notable horn, fury at ram. That's Alexander the Great, of course. The horn broken into 4. That is, his kingdom is split into 4 pieces towards his 4 generals, Lysimachus, Antipater, Ptolemy, and Seleucus. Lysimachus took Thrace and Asia Minor, Antipater took Macedonia and Greece, Ptolemy took Egypt in the south, and Seleucus took Syria, Babylon, and the north. It should be easy for forensic scientists to figure out if this was the body, the skeleton of Alexander the Great, because of the fact that we see that Alexander the Great had a typically ancient Greek profile, in that his nose, the bridge of his nose, started from his forehead. So if the skeleton, the cranium, has such a bone structure, it could very well be Alexander. If it doesn't, if the nose starts, for example, between the eyes and not from the forehead, that is definitely not Alexander the Great.